Alright, so here we are, part 3 of 4, step 2, week 3. I know it gets confusing a little bit, but going through step 2, if you look at the last page of the syllabus, the next week, the beginning of November, moves us through step 3 into the midterm, which means we're halfway through. So we've only got 4 or 5 more kind of video slideshow things that are going to bring us up into the midterm exam. So as normal, I don't have it in slideshow mode yet because we do have some tech time. I want to hit these, but first, as I'm thinking about it, let me show you something in Blackboard. There's nothing in here yet because I haven't graded and gotten back to you the first quiz because I'm doing the video a little bit ahead of time. One of the things you'll find under lessons is a folder. Where did I put it? Maybe I haven't built it yet. Because we haven't had one. So what I'm going to do, and what you'll see, I'll probably put it in here before the midterm exam. But I built a folder called Quizzes and Tests. And then what I do with those is take the quizzes that we've taken. Now they're online, they're open book, understand. But to me, when you're preparing for a midterm or final exam, going over the old quizzes that you've taken is a good place to start. And if you remember back, one of the earlier videos talked about test taking. And the best way to do it is to do it in 3 or 4 45-minute sessions as opposed to trying to cram, everything a half semester or at the end, everything we talked about for the final into 6 hours because your brain just won't keep up with it. So bear with me. I'll put that in there so as we approach the midterm, that's a place you can look. And then as we approach the final, you'll have all of the quizzes and the midterm test to help review and prepare for. And look, those are available. It's an open book, so there's no prohibition on having that folder available. And you probably won't see the actual, questions verbatim, but they're going to be over the same kind of themes because they're key parts of the class. So that's probably a useful thing. Okay, so I got sidetracked immediately, which is normal. So let's go back to where I was. Okay, to subscribe to the discussion boards, if you want to, you can what's called subscribe. I'll show you an example. Let's look at the online learning discussion board. If you go to this one, and again, I'm doing this about a week ahead, so there's nobody in there but me at this point. But if you look up here, I've already subscribed to it. So now I just unsubscribe, just so you can see what it looks like. If you want to get an email notifying you that somebody has maybe responded to one of your threads or that somebody's posted a new one, if you hit subscribe, it'll send you just a quick email that somebody has added a thread or a response to the discussion board. And I do that just so I see when you guys have responded so I can keep track, but you're welcome to do it as well. Again, not a must-do, but if you're interested in following along. The next one's a little bit more involved. I'm not going to get into gory detail, but it's called Degree Works. And let me drag that over so you can see what it looks like. This is in my GNTC. So actually, let me close that. I'll step through the entire process. My GNTC, log in, and remember the explanations there, it's slightly different than the single sign-on for email and Blackboard, but not significantly. Yours will say Student Services, and down toward the bottom there's a place called Degree Works. And what you can see is for students what it provides you. So you would put in your 900 number, or you could put in your last name and then run a search, and it'll tell you what degree program you're signed up for. And if you're an undecided student, it'll show what the school plugged you in as, just so that there's some kind of tracking mechanism. And of course you can still change that. If it's your first semester, it may not be what you decide to get your degree in. But if you do change your major, you do want to update that with the school, in part because we want DegreeWorks to be accurate. What it'll also show is classes that you've taken, classes that are upcoming, and it's kind of a pathway or a roadmap to graduation. Now there's another one you can use, but this one's tailored specifically to you. And that other one we talked about kind of way back when is if you go into academics, programs of study, and pull up whatever your degree program is. And remember, we looked at a couple just to kind of show what they look like, who the advisors are, where they live. If you click on their name, it'll give you their phone number and email address, a description, and then the courses you have to take. So this is another one. You could kind of print this page off and check them off. But again, DegreeWorks is more specific, and it will show if you try to register for a class, which you can do in my GNTC for the spring, for whatever semester it is. You can go in there, and that's where you would plug in those CRN numbers, right? The 5-digit code associated with the class. You can register for classes in DegreeWorks, okay, or in my GNTC rather. And so if there's a class that's a prerequisite, say you try to sign up for the second accounting class and you hadn't taken the first one, it'll say, you can't do that, and it'll explain why. So this is, unfortunately, in the class, oftentimes what I have is students stay after, and we'll kind of dig through this with them. You're a little bit more on your own, but you can see some of the other things that are included in this. So I would just avail myself to DegreeWorks. The thing to do is you want to talk to your advisor as you're registering for the next semester's classes. But don't go in there and go, what should I take, dude? Go in there after looking at this going, here's what I think I should take. They can look at it. They'll look in DegreeWorks and go, those are all good. Maybe switch this one, okay? Or maybe you can't take that because you haven't done the prerequisite yet. But it's better to go in with your plan and then maybe tweak it as opposed to going with no plan. And then they're going to go, this person doesn't really care. Now, that may not be the case, but it comes across that way. Okay, so that's kind of a quick and dirty on DegreeWorks. We don't need that. This one, I'll just talk about it instead of going back to the slides. This is a website where you can go in and look at either a school. If you notice, it says here, enter your school. You could put in Georgia Northwestern, and they have various campuses. You could put in Dalton State, whatever it is. Or, and just to kind of show you, if you want to find by professor, right, and you can type in their name. And believe it or not, there's more than a few breakies out there. So I just put all that. So Lori at Penn State, you got, this is an old one when I used to teach at Dalton State. Here's a more current one from GNTC. It's only one rating. GNTC students tend to not use this site as much as, say, your Georgia Tech, UGA, Dalton State folks do. But if you're looking at a class and you go, I got 3 choices on different instructors, and you're not sure which one to take, one, if a friend of yours is taking somebody and they say they're the greatest or they're the worst, I would listen to that. But you can also look on here. And so if you're looking for a history class at GNTC, you could see ratings, good feedback, hilarious, pop quizzes. I don't give pop quizzes. I don't know where that came from. And then kind of just a write-up. Hey, I'm an awesome guy. So whatever. Good teacher, grades, gives grades for the work you do. So if you see something like that, you might go, yeah. And I've seen some in here, and I'm not going to pull it up, but I know of one at Dalton State that basically says this woman is the worst human being on the face of the earth. And if you see one of those, well, it's probably because a student got a bad grade in their class and they're grinding their axe. But if you see a bunch of those, you might go, there's something here. Maybe she isn't the person to take when I have other choices. So that's called Rate My Professor. That's out there. And we can go back and refute some of these things. I really don't look at my ratings much. I just did that as an example. All right, let me get back. Where was I? Professional binder. I may have mentioned this, I may not have, but if I hadn't, repetition's a good thing. As you start developing more and more, you've got transcripts, easy for me to say, transcripts from school. You've got awards. You've got whatever it is. Start putting them in a single place where you can find them. Because when it comes time to build a resume, or I take this to job interviews with me, And again, I may have talked about this. I put all my info in here. It makes it easier to update my resume when needed. And if I get asked a question, which we're going to talk about today, a job interview type question, and they say, okay, how do you impact students? I can break out, some student reports, kind of like the Rate My Professor. I've got some notes, some letters that students have written me at the end of the semester about enjoying the class, really learned something, that kind of thing. It's all here. It's not just words. You can actually show them something. So I would start, if you haven't already, building that professional binder. Now, spring registration, it opened back in the middle of October, right, as we're driving toward the end of and into November. But that doesn't mean you can't register. It's really an ongoing thing. And so that's where going into DegreeWorks, looking at what do I take next, can be helpful. And the sooner you get in to register, look, some classes fill up rather quickly. Now, online classes, if they fill up, the school will usually add another one, and it's not predicated on time. But some classes aren't offered online, and if you need to take one in person and they only offer it once at the Walker County campus, you want to get in there and get in that class. So the sooner you register, the better, as far as the better instructors, the better times. Timer, nice typo. Let's fix that. The better you can make your schedule fit school with personal schedule. Okay, I think that's it for tech time. That wasn't so bad, huh? All right. Talking about careers, being your best you, right? Top 3 jobs, leadership, things like that. Here's just a note, a tidbit of info. This is a book that I read a few years ago now. It's been out for a couple of years. It started as a magazine article in the New Yorker, I believe. The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brain. And this guy, Nicholas Carr, finds that the Internet is it's an impediment. It gets in the way of our brains working like they used to. And part of that is the way the internet is designed. And if you've watched The Social Dilemma, which we're going to talk more about as the class goes on, a documentary about these algorithms and how the internet's designed to distract and keep you staring at the screen and making more clicks, because that's how they make their money. It's no wonder it's affecting our brains. So it started as this article is in the Atlantic, not the New Yorker. Is Google making us stupid? The answer is it depends. It can, doesn't have to. I think it's fascinating to Google something, watching a baseball game. Hey, this guy just got traded from somewhere else? You can look it up if you're interested. But the idea that these pop-ups, that these things to grab our attention, either on your phone or on the internet, decrease our ability to concentrate, to focus. They're a distraction. And it's because it's clickbait. It's to make money. And it's increased humans' demand for novelty, is the word he uses. The human brain craves novelty. That's why we like going to movies or going to amusement parks, whatever it is. But these short little TikTok-ish videos, man, you can have an hour go down the toilet just sitting there clicking on TikTok videos, and you look and you go, geez, where'd the time go? Because your brain demands those short little sugar rush kind of things. Little piece of candy for the brain. Okay? And so have you noticed, this is what got Carr started on writing this book, his attention span. He found that he could not focus. And I've found the same thing, that, I used to be able to sit and have this long cognitive chain of thought. Especially when I was working on my dissertation, man, it would be like a 6-hour train of thought. And you got some good stuff out of that because the focus was right there. But now with this, the more I use my phone, and I've been trying to use it for, scheduling things like that, I find it also sucks me in. And I've gone through and deleted Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, all of these off of my phone because they were difficult to not delve into. And when we look at The Social Dilemma, that documentary, they're the guys that develop some of these apps. don't even use them themselves, and forbid their kids from using them, which tells me all I need to know. These things are addictive. Okay? And why do they influence or interfere with our thinking? Is if you go back to the brain chart. Remember this? Short-term memory right here only lasts for a few minutes. You've got to do something to transfer stuff into long-term memory. If you're in the process of doing this, like studying or going over your notes, and ding, you've got mail. All of a sudden, that piece can get interfered with. This transfer, this arrow right here, the phone gets in the way of. And we short circuit the ability to put stuff into long-term memory. So I think he's onto something. Oops. Wonder why that happened. Maybe it's going to go backwards, huh? All right, some quotes of the day. You get to see mine first, right? Talking about being your best you. And this is going to lead a little bit into working with teams as we get into step 3 in the 4th week. Don't judge people by what they look like. If you do, you're going to not use the abilities of the people around you. I have never seen any correlation to what a person looks like, their race, their creed, their color, any of that, as to what they bring to the table as far as doing their job. So don't, right? I know where's it going to, oh, there it goes back to the top. Yep, I like this. It keeps me afloat because teachers certainly don't get paid hardly at all, but we do have some influence, and hopefully it's a positive one. I like this one. Think twice before you speak, right? Listen, think, then speak. Don't fly off the handle, and don't become emotional, right? What do we plant the seed of in other people, success or failure? I want to hold that thought for just a second. And this actually comes from a movie. It's called The Emperor's Club. It's about a boys' school and a kid that's in there that probably shouldn't be, but his dad's a senator, so he gets him in there. And he's a phony, and he's a phony his whole life, and it gets let out of the bag later in the movie. But this is what the teacher tells him. Your life is not determined by a single failure or a single success. If you do well, great. Go back and go, man, that went really well. Why did that go so well? If you fail at something, remember the circle of success and unsuccessful performance? That next step is critical. Do I pick myself up, dust myself off, learn from it, and then continue the circle of success? Or do I let that spiral downwards, that now I expect less of myself, and then you have another unsuccessful performance and you spiral down the toilet, right? So don't get a big head if you win something, and don't give up if you lose something. None of those define your life. It's a whole series of, what have you done for me lately, right? So what do we teach others with our attitudes, with our actions? If you're like me, oh, hopefully you're not, but I become kind of like a different person behind the wheel. I have very little patience for idiots behind the wheel, especially with cell phones. And they think they're being covert, but it's so obvious, isn't it? They're doing one of these and they're weaving all over. So I get next to them and go, I'm a jerk back, and I probably shouldn't. But our actions influence and teach other people. And you don't have to be a teacher to do that, how you interact with your peers at work or at school. So those are just a couple things. Do we teach patience, empathy, putting ourselves in other people's shoes? Greed, impatience, right? That guy, impatient, you idiot. These 2 videos, the first one comes from, I want to say it's German. And it has to do with how we become so wrapped up in our own little lives. And it's understandable, some of the examples in this little commercial are doctors. They're very, important. Their job is important. But what's really important? And I'll just leave it at that. That one, and the reason I made it red is it's one of the best ones I've seen, because it makes you sit back and go, kind of like that Children See, Children Do. If you watch that one, that public service announcement about how children emulate what they see from their parents. Okay? This one makes you kind of rethink, at least for a minute, what's important to me. And then the second one was just kind of an interesting, you've seen a million probably anti-texting type videos that are out there. This one has a different take, and I like it. The first time I saw it, I was like, what's going on here? And that makes you think about what's going on. It shifts you into that system two, that deeper critical thinking piece. Look, if you've got a text, pull over and do it. Use hands free to talk. Um, to me, when I see somebody texting, it tells me that they're just selfish, that they don't care about anybody but themselves. They're putting everyone else on the highway at risk so they can send a text or read one. Pull over for a minute. All right, enough preaching. Words of the day. We're talking about, being your best you. Um, where's that career? What is it? How are you going to get there? Where's it going to take you in life? And one of the words I think that goes with this pretty well is passion. And sometimes we think about passion as like, right, kissy face. But passion in this case, a strong affection, enthusiasm. If you're enthusiastic about something, if you really like it, it's going to help. You have a passion for whatever it is. I have a passion. I love racing. And it makes the 20 hours of work in the garage for every hour on the track acceptable. In fact, I kind of look forward to it. You'd say that's crazy. But if you're enthusiastic about something, you don't sit and count the 20 hours. You look at the results. Sometimes they're great. Every once in a while, you have one of those weekends from hell where the car blows up. It's nothing but problems. And every once in a while, you're like, man, I'm sick of this. But then that passion creeps back in, that I really love it. So what are you passionate about? What in your life drives enthusiasm? Something you'd like to do? And remember, I've mentioned this too. Just because you do something you love doesn't mean there's not going to be days that aren't just drudgery, right? If you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. BS. But guess what? Overall, the days are going to be far better than if you just do something to get a paycheck that you hate. Okay? So figure that out. You know it. I don't. What are you passionate about? You have to know yourself. Okay? Enthusiasm. It comes up again. Those are just two separate definitions. Intense desire, ardent affection. Yeah, again, we tend to think kissy face, but not. Here's another one, and it's kind of an odd concept. It comes from a guy named Malcolm Gladwell, who's written some very interesting books, and it's about this term outlier. And what an outlier is, when you do research, like I did a survey of students for my research, and you get a normal kind of grouping of results. But every once in a while, there'll be one that's way out here. That's an outlier. It's outside this normal pattern of results. And that's what Gladwell talks about. It's a value far away from the normal set of data. And what he did was he looked at people that are highly successful. First chair violin in the London Symphony, right? Arguably the best violinist in the world. So musicians, athletes, people in research, in medicine, all these that were super highly successful. And what he found out was to get to that level of success, you had to put in somewhere in the range of 10,000 hours. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but the idea of putting in that much time and effort to get really good at something is what makes you really good at something. It doesn't just happen. There's no such thing as an overnight success. They may come to our attention overnight, but they've been working at it for a long time before they came to our attention. Okay? And then this one, I just want to make sure we differentiate, clarify. You hear people say, I need. Well, do you? There's a big difference between a want and a need. You guys know what these are. They're not cosmic. To want something, yeah, I want a new phone, a new car. But if I need something, that means it may be a requirement. Heck, it may be for survival. Something that is required. Okay, so do I want a new phone or do I need a new phone? Because those get transposed. Probably want, right? If your phone's busted and you need it for work, then yeah, I'd agree. You need a new phone. It's part of the your success, your career. Same thing with a car. If your piece of crap Hyundai is getting you to and from work and it looks terrible and it stinks inside, but it runs, maybe you run it till it blows up and save money for that new car. So maybe in that case it's a want. But if your car does blow up and the engine's laying in 1,000 pieces on the side of the road and you need it to get to and from work, well then maybe you need a new car. Just understand the difference. Because if I can translate to you in your brain something that's a want and I can make it become a need, you're more apt to buy it. And that's what commercials are, folks. Changing wants into needs, at least up here. You can survive without it, but the more you hear it, oh man, I need a new car. Do you? Keep driving the smelly Hyundai. How does this mixing up affect our job and our quest for money? Well, it absolutely does. Our job maybe not as much, except for the fact that sometimes we follow careers because they pay extremely well. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe following our passion and getting paid a little less and maybe having a little more free time in the garage or with our kids is worth more than an extra $2 or $3 an hour. And that took me a long time to figure out. So it's a fairly famous thing. It's called Maslow's hierarchy. It's a hierarchy of needs. And what Maslow came up with was this idea that if I cannot fulfill the very basic needs, survival, food, water, shelter is usually how it's phrased. If I can't meet these, I can't do anything above this. So as I do that, and now I have a home that's safe, and now I have relationships, that you can actually move yourself up these Maslow's, this pyramid of Maslow's, to the point of achieving your full potential. So the idea that if I can't even meet these physiological needs, that I can somehow snap and get up here and reach my full potential, nonsense. Why do you think school lunches are so prevalent? Because a lot of times kids only eat when they're at school. And if you're hungry, you're not going to learn anything. Okay? That is Malcolm Gladwell. A rather interesting looking character, isn't he? And that's the book. And in fact, it's over here on my shelf. So here's Malcolm's idea, the 10,000 hour rule. He said that is what it takes of concentrated effort, not just staring at something, but you look at if you're a soccer fan, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi. Those guys have put in, I guarantee, more than 10,000 hours. Think how many touches of the soccer ball each of those guys have put in. That's how they got really good. Yes, they have some, what could we call it, God-given ability. They were good at it, but it was the time and effort to get really good at it. What's Pupper's barking at? Let's see, she'll shut up. Excellence takes time and effort, plain and simple. You're not going to snap into things. Again, you may be better initially because you have some God-given ability, but to be excellent, remember Marty St. Louis, the little hockey player? He had to overcome both the people saying you're too small and just that physical size in a game of hockey. So overnight success, examples of one of the things Gladwell, or one of the groups Gladwell looks at, is the Beatles. All right, overnight success. They came to America, started the British invasion. They were an overnight sensation off of the Ed Sullivan Show. Well, if you know more about the Beatles, guess what? Excuse me. They went to Germany. This is post-World War II Germany, and played 6 nights a week, sometimes 5 and 6 hours a night, in these kind of seedy, crappy little bars in and around Berlin. And so they got really good. And they lived behind the bar in like a room with no running water, one light bulb, and slept there. So it was very austere. But now, all of a sudden, they get their opportunity. That door opens, Ed Sullivan Show, national television audience. And they kicked the door in because they'd practiced for so long together that they were fantastic. And you may or may not like their music, but that's what Gladwell's talking about. Work really hard. They put in the legwork, and that gave them the chance for success, but it wasn't overnight. All right, beginning with the end in mind, here's one of the concepts that's out there. Start your process, starting college. You're starting college with the end in mind, graduation, a career. There's things out there. So think about it. What are your goals? And this will help inform that top 3 jobs worksheet. Okay? What are your goals? Where do you want to go? And goals can be short, medium, long term. To me, short term, within the length of maybe a semester. Pass this class, pass all my classes, register for the next semester. Medium term, maybe a year or so. Longer term, graduation, getting started in my career. Right? A long term can go as long as you want. So what are those goals? Are they meaningful? too simple a goal doesn't really prove anything. So make them challenging, but make them realistic. Right? For me to say my goal is I want to be a Formula One race driver. Well, I'm going to be 58 pretty soon. I'm too fat to even fit in a Formula One car. Not realistic. Okay. Aspirational means set them high enough to challenge you. So all of those are good things to do when it comes to goals. Okay. I've heard this said, you've probably heard it, and heck, I may have said it myself somewhere along the way. Build a solid resume. I did just say it right in this, building your professional binder so it helps with building a resume, but I want to put a little perspective on that as well. There's an article, and it's in the supplemental materials folder, lessons, and scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's an article by a guy named David Brooks, who's a conservative writer, but he writes in the New York Times, which is a liberal newspaper. But he sat back and thought about, do we put too much emphasis on polishing our image, on building a resume, as opposed to this idea of a eulogy? And that's how he describes it. Resume virtues, eulogy virtues. And a eulogy is what somebody says about you at your funeral. And I like the way he put that in perspective. In so much as, yes, build a good resume, but don't be an awful person in that quest for more money, more power, whatever it is. What are people going to say about you when you're gone? And maybe we should think about that once in a while, not just how perfect my image is. Look, do the best you can, but do it ethically. Do it with some morals in mind. And guess what? In week 4, we're going to talk about ethics and ethical dilemmas because they're all over the place. Right? January 6th is still in my... I don't understand how that could have happened and how it was allowed to happen. Okay? And the commission seeking information on it now is being blocked at every turn, mostly because the people involved don't want that information to get out. Okay? And build yourself a roadmap to graduation. That's why I started with that degree works. You can look at your academic pathway on the GNCC homepage, right? Under academics, programs of study. But degree works is even more specific to you. So do you have a roadmap to graduation? If your goal is to graduate, great. But what are the pieces that are going to make that goal a reality? Because otherwise, unfulfilled goals are broken dreams. So you can want to graduate all you want, but you better figure out how you're going to do it. Yep. And how you're going to do it's applying yourself to each and every class. Now, look, some are going to be harder than others, but you've got to get through them to get to the finish line. And so kind of getting toward the finish line here, career selection, I can't tell you what your career should be. That's why I started with the idea of passion. So these pictures, do you throw a dart at the dartboard? What do I want to do? Or this one, the reason I put this clip art picture in is money. Money is part of the equation, right? I want to make enough to pay the bills. I want to make enough to have some to enjoy as well, because life shouldn't be just like work, 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 school, 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 sleep, repeat. A little bit of time for self, a little bit of time to enjoy things with friends, family, significant other. So yes, but don't sell your soul to earn another dollar an hour. Don't do something unethical to make more money. Again, I feel like I'm getting preachy, but see so much of that. You know, you can go through a whole litany of businesses that went down the drain because of unethical behavior. Right? The whole mortgage meltdown in the banking industry darn near brought this country into another Great Depression because of a few greedy, unethical, I'm not even going to say the word, running the banks in this country. Somewhere somebody knew that was wrong and didn't speak up. So there's some things out there. This is a link, you can go to it. The reason I'm not a fan of like career choice links, they kind of ask you a bunch of questions and say you should be a fire watcher at the end. But this one has some kind of sliding mechanism that you can say, you know, time off or a stress-free environment or competition or whatever it is, and you can slide that up as being more or less important, which is unusual in some of these tests. So if you want to do it, you can just, you know, follow that link. It'll take you to it. I want you to think about this. Again, this would be a classroom activity. We can't do it, so I want you to do it on your own. In the next year, 5 years, 10 years, how would you define success? If a year from now you look back and you go, that was a successful year, or not, and hopefully it is, 5 years, 10 years, as that time horizon expands, there should be more things involved in what defines your success. And so when you do that, think about a short-term and a long-term goal. And a simple one is finishing the semester, getting A's and B's in all my classes, graduation as I move to the more longer term. But success is defined by you, not by me. I mean, I can give you a grade for the class. If you get an A, great, that was successful. But it's bigger than that. So you need to think about what success means to you. Is it just my wallet's fatter? I would suggest that's not a very good measure. If your wallet's fatter and you've done a job and helped people and become an RN, I think that's a better answer. Okay, so kind of selection-wise, again, I can't tell you what your job should be. It'd be too, I'd get it wrong. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. Are you good at it? At least a little bit. Look, you may not be the best at X, but you see people like Marty St. Louis, the little hockey player, who more than made up for natural ability with hard work. So I would say if you're at least moderately good at it, but work your butt off at it, you can do better than somebody that's got, the total God package, God-given talent package. Do you like it? Right? You don't want to do something as a career that you don't like. And personally, like for me, being an accountant, 1, I hate math, 2, I hate numbers, 3, I hate doing paperwork. So even if it paid a lot, I'd be miserable. So don't go down that path. I don't like it. I like being a pilot. And then can you make a living at it? So there are some things in there, this passion idea. Well, I'm passionate about French art history. Wonderful. Can you make a living doing it? There's probably a few jobs out there at various colleges in the world, but it's a handful of jobs. And so at least if you're going to do that, go into it with your eyes wide open, that there are very limited jobs, and I may have to do something completely different for a while until that opens up, right? So that's what you distill all that down, and to me, that's your passion. Are you passionate about that? What I mean by this is sometimes we think about, I want to be a radiologist, okay, obviously in the medical world. But expand that box, and let me give you the quick example. This is my wife, RN, and she'd been working in surgery for 6, 7, 8 years maybe, and she got a chance to work. I don't even remember how this happened, but we lived in Columbus, Mississippi, which was really close to Starkville, which is where Mississippi State is, and she got a chance to take off from being RN in a human hospital. She went to work at the vet school at Mississippi State and helped do surgery on tigers and giraffes and all kinds of exotic animals. And so in the medical profession, there are hundreds of different little career niches. So don't be too laser focused, right? Make your box bigger. Open your scope up to other opportunities. Are you willing to put in the 10,000 hours? Sometimes that's what makes all the difference. Okay, and I've got a couple quotes associated with that. Again, a classroom exercise, but go ahead and do this in your own head, thinking about something you're passionate about. And did you do well at it? And I use this as kind of a kickoff in the class. This has happened multiple times. So get off work at 5 o'clock on a Friday night. Go home, load up my car and my tools, head out of Chattanooga. It's about 7 o'clock at night at this point. And in this case, this specific example, I was driving over to Rockingham, North Carolina to race that weekend. And so about 10 hours later, I get there. The track's closed, of course, because it's like 3 in the morning when I get there. So I parked in an empty field across from the racetrack, slept in my van for a couple hours, woke up, got in as soon as the track opened the next day, and raced that whole weekend for a trophy and a few $100 because I'm passionate about it. I really love doing it. And so you don't see those things as an impediment. If I didn't love it, that would seem like, I ain't doing it. I'm skipping that. Okay, so that's what I'm getting at. I've done it a lot. Something you're passionate about. Think about that. And can that maybe push you, not push, give you a vector toward a career path? So here's those quotes. And interestingly, this guy Colin Powell, who was a 4-star general and Secretary of State, just passed away from COVID. And he wasn't an anti-vaxxer. He had had cancer, and so his immune system was highly compromised. So he caught a dose of it, and that was all she wrote. But I think he's right. There's no secret to success. Preparation, hard work, learning from failure. He failed some. Look where he ended up. 4-star general, Secretary of State. Oh yeah, and he's African American too. Teddy Roosevelt. I work harder than the average man. Simply working harder. If everybody's the same, I want the person I don't have to kick in the butt to do the job. I want to have to say, whoa, 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 once in a while. Work harder. And I agree with this. You know, some of the things that happened to me was because I simply worked harder than the other pilots in the squadron. And it wasn't backstabbing them. It was just working hard so that when my chance came, I was able to take it. Because that's what happens. Opportunity once in a while will knock, like it did for the Beatles. If you're not prepared, it's going to go to the next person. Okay. So again, you can look at this for yourself. I'm going to skip over my piece, another classroom type exercise, but think about something that went well, something you're proud of. And then what we would normally do is go around the class and ask, okay, what was it? Why did it happen that way? Why are you proud of it? Why was it a success? And almost every time, if you peel that onion back, you find out that the person had been prepared for it and worked very hard to get there. No secret. If you just half-ass it, that's what you're going to get, half-ass results. So yeah, here's mine. You know, I moved from single-seat fighter type aircraft into crew C-130s and special ops. And I busted my butt to learn this new airplane and a whole new culture of flying with other people in the plane instead of just me in the cockpit. And so the bottom line was, because of that, every so often an opportunity would open up and the squadron commander would say, this guy is the best choice. So I moved up from just co-pilot to 3 years later being the overall evaluator for all pilots in special ops, right, in our aircraft. Phew. People are like, damn, who's he know? Whose butt's he kissing? I could ask that, but it was just because I worked my butt off. Okay? All right, wrapping up. Think about this too. What do you want to work with? A lot of people like working with their hands. Mechanics, HVAC folks, welders. Absolutely, I like working with my hands. But something that happens as you age, your brain, your head tends to last longer than the body as we get older. Climbing up and down, getting underneath race cars, it's harder than it used to be. So maybe you do start off as a welder or working in HVAC, but then as you progress, maybe you become the owner of the company and you have these young underlings doing that up and down grunt work and you run the company. So just something to think about. What do you really like working with? Okay? And it may be a combination of things, but the head tends to last longer. So here, this is just an example. I want to kind of finish with an invigorating exercise that I did. I did this a couple years ago, on a thing called Career Builder, kind of like Monster, all these job search websites that are out there. And what I did was the Chattanooga area, which included Dalton, Rock Spring, all of that. And I went in and looked at, based on your education level, how many jobs are available. High school diploma, some. Associates, look at that jump in number of jobs from high school to associate's degree. Smaller jump to bachelor's and a very small jump to graduate, because those are additive. So that's the difference. That's why I gave this second piece. So I get another 426 jobs by having an associate's degree. And you can see the numbers get smaller as you go up. Now there's another piece to this. I added a $50,000 salary, okay? And what happened was, look at the numbers. You go, man, $50,000 and almost all the high school jobs, still show up. Well, that's because all but 10 were military. The way the military calculates salary is all the benefits like on-base housing, food, uniform fees, things like that. So really only 10, unless you were going to join the military, had over 50,000. But what you see on the lower levels is, even though these had smaller jumps, right? Getting a bachelor's degree only added 97 jobs, but almost all of them had a salary above 50,000. So lots of jobs available, and this really differentiates you. An associate's degree says you can do something that a lot of people can't. Stick to a task that's difficult. So I think that should be a plus, a thumbs up for you. So thinking about this sweet spot, passion, talent, are you good at it? Your conscience, the voice in your head, does what you do match your personal ethical compass? And is there a need for it? It's as simple as that, really. I'm going to let you guys you can use this. What I would recommend is if you're going in for a job interview, there's plenty of these online, but sit down. Don't try to memorize answers or you make a speech, but think about these typical questions so that when you go in there, you're ready to answer them. But don't make it a speech because that comes across very dry. Okay, you sat down and memorized this. Your best 3 traits. What skills do you bring? Situationally, what would you do if this happened? Okay. Tell me about a leadership challenge. Biggest weakness. That's a good one. And don't say I'm a workaholic because that's a BS answer. All right. What is your biggest weakness? Mine is I tend to think my ideas are the best. Am I arrogant? No, because, well, okay, yes. But it's because I give a lot of time and effort before I make a decision. It's not something that I fly off the cuff. And I know that. And to work on it, I have to allow for other people to have good, maybe better answers and to shut up once in a while. That's mine. Okay. Why did you leave your last job? Can we contact your old employer? If you say no, that's a red flag. Why? Because I stormed out in a huff and I didn't give 2 weeks notice. Okay. And how would you handle? I'm not listening to a woman. Right? How would you handle something like that? Right. Major versus career. They're related, but they're not the same. Again, make the scope bigger. Not just radiology, but maybe something in the medical world. And your path is not going to be this second bullet. Nobody's is. You don't go from major to career like that. It goes like this. And eventually you'll see it dampen out. So give yourself room to try other things. Okay? Beware that money trap, the resume trap. That you're making yourself look perfect, but you're not being ethical. Okay? Over 45. Again, 47. So, next video. 2 things I want to do. This last one. Is it 8 or 9? I'll have to double check. Just ignore that number. The leadership discussion board. What I'm going to do is take the traits, the top 3 traits that each of you come up with, and distill those down and put that into the last video for our step 2 for our week 3. Okay. And I'll put in some of the things I've learned along the way. 22 years of service, 3 times deployed mission commander in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got some tips and tricks on leadership as well. All right. So let's leave it at that so I don't go over 50 minutes and you guys totally fall asleep. I will see you in the last video for our step 2, being the best you. See you then.